Today we're going to be painting a monarch butterfly. You may choose to photograph this sketch that I've made of one monarch, or perhaps this photograph that I'm about to put up. Monarchs are beautiful because of their coloring, all the little spots. The one thing that you saw in the photograph that you don't see in my sketch is a series of tiny white dots that fit into the dark black sections on the edges of all these wings. We're going to look at a couple of different ways to address those. But first of all, let's start with the sketch. One of the difficult things about butterflies is that they are symmetric. I'm going to give it a little head and a body there, and then I'm going to start on the wings. And I generally have trouble getting the wings to come out exactly the same each time, but as those of you who've watched several of my videos know, I'm not big on perfection. I like some freedom within what we're trying to do. Let's give him some antenna and a couple of feet in the front. There we go. The pattern on the monarch is what makes it so amazingly beautiful. We're going to start with this middle section here. Put a big oval there. Whatever we do on the left, we'll repeat on the right because we want it to be as symmetric as possible. Then we're going to have three kind of U-shaped pieces that come up and almost touch that oval. So wherever your oval was, just come right up to it, and then almost down to the ends. And I'm going a little too far to the ends. I forgot I need to leave this area clear here for the black. So I'm going to change that. I don't have to erase it. The paint will eat it up for me. Then in the section closest to its body, there's another big piece that comes out sort of in the middle, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, including that edge one, 6. Let's do the edge one first. Smaller pieces that attach to it. Now these are more like upside down U's, round up there and flat on the bottom. I usually like to start with the one in the middle and then do the ones around that. And the side ones are a little bit higher. So one in the middle, a couple on this side, a couple on this side. You'll find that monarch butterflies vary and their markings are all over the map, so if yours doesn't look like mine, don't worry about it. Over here we've got 3 big O's, and then smaller O's, and 1 O. So O, 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 O. They're not really quite in a row. They shouldn't be quite in a row. There should be a little variety between them. Then the same thing on this side. O, 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 smaller O's, even smaller O's, and 1 O alone. Okay, that covers our sketch. Okay, we said we were going to talk about the different ways to leave white in a picture so we can figure out how we're going to do those little white dots along the edge there. One way is to just avoid that area and try and leave it blank. That's very difficult with such small spots. Another way is to mask the spots by using a product called a liquid mask, M-A-S-Q-U-E. This happens to be Richardson. Daniel Smith also makes an excellent one, and I like also one called the mask pen that has a tiny little tip on it for doing small things. But I tend to use a toothpick and a liquid mask here. We're going to use the mask on one side of this butterfly, and on the other side we're going to use the third way of doing this, which is considered cheating by some people in the fine art world, but I don't think there is such a thing as cheating in art. I think anything goes. and that would be to use a white pen after it's done. I'm not getting very much mask on here. I've got to get a little more coming out. There we go. So just random polka dots there all along this edge. Kind of a ruffle effect on the edge of the butterfly wings. Anyhow, so we will, on the other wing, use white pen after we've painted in a solid black and see how that compares to this method with the mask. I think I may also use the mask on the littlest dots up here because they're going to be very hard to paint around without running them over. But the dots don't have to be perfect shapes. Nature is full of irregularities. Those even touched each other, so they're kind of a peanut instead of a dot. And I think I'll do the small ones on this side too, just because I know it's going to make life a lot easier. After that, I'm going to pause the camera and let them dry. You may need to go and do something else if you have mask while yours dry, and if you don't have mask, you can just move ahead and completely stick with the inking afterwards, or the trying to avoid it while you're painting it technique. These are looking more like dashes over here because I'm getting too much of the side of the toothpick. We'll make them a little bit rounder. There we go. Okay, I'm back. The mask, which is kind of like a rubber cement type fluid, ought to be almost dry. And I've decided we're going to do another experiment with one side different on this butterfly wing, so that you can choose which way you want to do your whole butterfly, or you can experiment along with me. And that is, on one side we're going to paint the entire section orange in here and come back in with black ink to draw the thin lines between the little orange pieces. On the other side, we're going to paint the orange in there and then paint the black separately around it and see how that works. So first of all, the orange only side. Now on a monarch butterfly, the piece that's a little farther away from them in the middle tends to be a darker orange than the piece that's closer to them. So we're going to start with the orange that I have in my palette here, which is New Gamboge. It's a fairly light orange, and so I'm going to do the entire section here, except there is a stripe of darkness, dark black, between the sections, and I do go all the way out on this edge though. So this side we're going to end up putting those lines, those interior lines in by with an ink pen. See how that works. Now I need a little bit darker, so I'm going to have to mix some of that orange with a pink or a red. I think really a red is more appropriate because the two colors that I have here in the pink to red range, the pink is kind of purpley and the red is a little more lean to the orange, so it will do a better job of mixing with my orange. Unless you're trying to make something dull or muddy, you do want to stick to the same side of the color wheel where possible. Now, I've just got a bad feeling that this is too dark of an orange. Let's test it out here and put it down. Yeah, that's too big of a difference. So we're going to take just one drop of this, put it in another bin, clean the brush really good. Takes a lot to clean the brush sometimes. And then come back and get some more of the light orange and mix a lot of light orange in there. Put too much of the red in. And now we'll test that. Much better. So it's darker than this one, but it's not outrageously dark. And once again, I'm leaving room for a thick black line between the sections. And I'm coming down to this, I call it the black ruffle on the bottom where we put all our dots. Okay, now we're going to move on to this side where we said we were going to try it by painting the orange just as it's sketched up here, section by section, and then painting black in between. So I'm in the higher section now. I'm using the darker orange. I know you can't see my sketch, but I did do it with a watercolor pencil so that it will dissolve when we come back in with paint on top of it. And as long as you can see this one, you can follow what I'm doing. Now we're finished with the dark orange. We're going to go back to the lighter orange. Get some clean water in there. All these orange shapes that fill in there. Okay, now we're going to do the two outer sections, and the orange is so small there that we're just going to do it as is. And the color on that orange varies a little bit within, so we're going to do some of it with the lighter orange, and then towards the front edge we're going to go for the darker orange. And as you can see, I'm not being terribly careful with my sizes and shapes there. We will have an opportunity to repair things when we ink them, and I just think things aren't real well precisely the same in nature, so it's good to have a little difference when we're painting them. While that's drying, let's take a little look at the body of the bug itself. Now the central portion of the bug is basically black. You can play with colors on that a little bit if you like, throw in some blue or purple just to change it up a bit. Or brown. I'm going to start with some brown just to give it some marks down there and to make the eyes a little brighter than the rest. Then I'm going to come in with some black and get a little outline on the rest of the body. Well, my black wasn't very dark there. I didn't get a lot of water and not much pigment. So just kind of a oval, I think that's the thorax there, and then a long skinny body coming out from behind that, and I'm mixing the browns and the blacks live there as we do it. I think we're going to keep the antenna and the feet for doing with a pen because it's so much smaller and pointier and you can do easily with a pen. I am going to try and do some of the head here. It will moosh into the eyes a little bit, but that's kind of what I wanted it to do. There we go. So we have a little black head with little brown eyes bulging out of it. Now, time to get a little bit more water in that black and make sure we've mixed some serious pigment in that water because we want a good dark black as we start making the black portions here. So first of all, we're going to do this section that goes between those, and I'm touching to make sure my mask is dry. It's dry. So we can do this, what I call the ruffle on the end that has the polka dots in it. And if things are looking too gray, go back and get a little bit more pigment. You notice I put on the mask with a toothpick. Some people do use a brush for it, but it has to be a brush which you never want to use for paint again because it will pretty much wreck the brush, even if you clean it afterwards. Now I have to glance at my photograph to see exactly how much to put up here. It's thick coming out here, and it gets a little thinner going like there, and about halfway down here. It starts to, well, really, since I've masked this, I can do the whole thing black over that area, and just be careful of my little orange bits that I painted down here. See, I'm going around them, but up here where the mask is, I can go right over them. I'd like that to be a little darker too, so I'll add some more pigment. Same thing on the other side, because we did that one the same way this time. I'm going to start down here and circle these. Doesn't matter if you get a little white in there. Once again, you're painting something that is symmetric. It's the same from the left wing to the right wing. And so we're going to have to kind of keep an eye on how dark the paint is and try and make that the same on both. Now I am going to paint the ruffle solid black on this side, because we're going to come back with a pen later to give it some color. So I'm going to go across the whole ruffle, touching the bottoms of these orange sections. Coming back in, starting another bit of ruffle. They've got to meet each other there. This one went up to that point. I'm looking back and forth from the left wing to the right wing to make sure that I do them as much alike as possible. Okay, now there needs to be a heavy black. Some of you have figured out that I'm new to the whole videoing world, and I'm still learning. Have to confess that the camera stopped recording and I kept painting merrily along. So I'll have to back up a little bit and explain to you that I did finish filling in all the blacks on this side. Remember, the right side is the side where we're painting the black lines. The left side, we're going to put them in with ink. I did also decide to put in just the vaguest background, just a suggestion that there's some kind of pink and yellow flowers and leaves where this butterfly is landing and eating. So anyhow, now we're caught up. We are going to put the ink on this left wing to match the paint on that side. And for the inking, I'm using a Sharpie pen. And in this case, I may wish it was a little bit thicker because I do want to try and match the other side. But we'll see how it goes. So I'm going to look at the pattern on the right and try and reproduce that on the left. So there's a big kind of an oval thing there. There's one that goes like this, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and an end one. And they're round towards the top. Did I get that right? Might be 5 over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. This one and this one may end up having to come together, but we're going to have to use a lot of ink to make it heavier anyhow in order to match that side. Now you could also do your whole butterfly with ink at this point and just make it one thin little ink line like that. Or you could use a Sharpie marker, which will give you a fatter ink line. Or you can take this thin one and just run it over and over on things until they're fat enough for you. Fat enough to make it look somewhat like the other side. If I feel in the end that the two sides don't match, I may take a Sharpie marker and go over both of them, and then they'll really match. Okay, so then this darker section is kind of a piece that comes here and turns up. And then down from that, there's two pieces, and they're more rounded on the bottom. Once again, we'll thicken them up so they look more like that side. Okay, so we've created the pattern there on both wings, and you can decide which one you like better to do for yourself. I can see that there's a little bit of paint still drying right around this piece of mask there. So I'm going to give this another minute. I'm going to reach in a cabinet, get a Sharpie marker, and do what I said. So I'm going to Sharpie marker over both sides, and I'll just make it an outline to each of these oranges. And then that will make my painting look more uniform. Every painting that I do is an experiment, and oftentimes I will do exactly what I did here, which is do part of the painting one way and part of the painting the other way to see which one I like better. But I do have to say that in the end I kind of like the two sides to match. So it's good that I have this Sharpie marker and can do this. That side looks very nice. Let's see how this side looks after it gets Sharpie markered. Still got some little bitty lines showing, but that's not bad. So in this case, the Sharpie marker gives a nice, smooth, dark, heavy line to each of those. I can also mark the edges of these, which will give them a nice little bit of definition and make them match the rest of it. Okay, we're going to pause for a moment while that little bit there dries, and then we'll come back and see what happens when you remove the mask. Sometimes I have to do a kind of a video PS. I confess that I looked at this painting after it was done and decided that there was way too much empty space down here. So I've added some leaves in a variety of colors just to make that little monarch butterfly feel more at home. Thanks for painting.